Okay, so this is your sentence structure mini lesson number 1. Okay, the standards that we're going to talk about, you'll see up here at the top. You're going to focus on writing. Okay, you're going to produce clear writing to develop uh, something that is appropriate to the task and demonstrate command of standard English capitalization, punctuation, and spelling when writing. I'm going to show you this on this assignment and explain it, but you'll see these on future assignments. I won't explain it every time, just this time. You will see this phrase on assignments, SWBAT. That stands for students will be able to. Okay. So students will be able to identify DC, that's the abbreviation for dependent clause, I was running out of room, and IC, which is the abbreviation for independent clauses. IOT stands for in order to write a variety of sentences. So in the future, when you see these acronyms, your mind should tell you, this is what I'm learning. You're learning dependent clauses and independent clauses so that you can create what? Okay. This is the skill you're learning, and this is the assignment you're doing. Okay, that might help keep it in focus. Okay, so mini lesson number 1, you're going to identify dependent clauses and independent clauses in order to write a variety of sentences. Quick review to make sure that you're with me. A complete sentence has a subject, which is who or what is doing something. It has a predicate, which is what the subject is doing, which is a verb. Okay. And it completes your thought, and that's key. A lot of kids sometimes forget that one. A fragment is missing one of those 3 elements. There are 4 types of sentences. Okay. The first one is a simple sentence. This is the one that most teenagers write, and it's the one I want you to stay away from. Not that there's anything inherently wrong with the simple sentence, but it's the one that you use all the time. And so when you're writing an essay, you're using only simple sentences, and that's a problem. And so what we're going to try to do is train you to use the other types of sentences so that if you have a simple sentence, it's not a big deal. There is a purpose behind them, and they're not bad if you use them for a reason. But for now, we're going to try to stay away from using too many simple sentences. Okay, simple sentence is one complete sentence. Okay, compound sentence is one complete sentence, and then it's combined with something, and I'll show you on the next slide what that something is, and then another simple sentence. Complex sentence is a dependent clause, which is a fragment, and then it's combined with a comma, and then your complete sentence. A compound complex sentence has a fragment, comma, complete sentence, comma, fanboy conjunction, and a comma. And I'll show you the fanboy conjunctions later. So these are your 4 types of sentences. What is a subject? It has to be a noun or a pronoun, who or what the sentence is about. A verb, you can see it. Riley jumps. You can see Riley jumping. Okay. She smiles. You can see her smiling. She is pretty. You can't really see is pretty, so that's more of a linking verb. Okay, but it's still a verb. Okay, so some of them do just link or help. Okay, it can be a helping verb in a sentence. So just keep in mind that not all verbs can be seen. You have helping or linking verbs. A run-on sentence. Now, I'll preface this. The skills that I'm emphasizing with commas are skills that you see on the ACT. In my mind, it is much more beneficial for you to learn how to write using these skills than to test prep and memorize these before the test. Instead, learn to use them, recognize them, and then that way, if you do decide to go to college, then you've got all of these mad skills and you're going to ace the ACT. If you don't want to go to college, then when you go into the workforce, you've got the ability to communicate. And your boss will be super impressed because you have the ability to communicate in multiple ways. Either way, we don't have to cram right before the test. So I'm focusing on the ones that are the most common, which are the ones ACT tests on, but we're not going to cram right before. So that's why we're going to learn them, not cram them, okay? All right, a run-on. A run-on means that you have two or more independent clauses, which I abbreviate IC, with no punctuation or connector between them. Has to be fixed. You cannot have a run-on sentence. There's 4 ways to correct them. We headed off to the game during the rain. The rain stopped before we got here. Now, when I read that to you, I paused because I'm used to pausing because that was a run-on. You, as a listener, said, oh, hey, that should have something there. The problem is that when you're writing, you often leave off that punctuation, and that's not a good thing. You have to make sure that you have that. I think text messaging is partly to blame for that because it's gotten worse since text messaging came out. I know that dates me as very old, but still, we have to be very conscientious about the fact that you have to have punctuation, especially with distance learning, okay? 4 ways. You can use a period and a capital letter, okay? You can use a comma and then fanboy. And I have the fanboys on the next slide for you. You can use just a regular semicolon, or you can use a semicolon and a conjunctive adverb, with a comma. And that's important, that if you use the word, however, you do have to put a comma after it. Okay? This is called a compound sentence. When you do this. Now, I'm going to be asking you frequently to write compound sentences. I would highly recommend that you take out a piece of paper and at the top you write notes and then write how to write a compound sentence. And a period, capital letter, comma, fanboy conjunction, a semicolon, or semicolon conjunctive adverb, and a comma. And make yourself those notes so that you can flip back to that every time I ask you between now and May. Okay? So this is your compound sentence. Fragments, something's missing. Although I went home. Yes, you have a subject, you have a verb, but no complete thought. Traveled to the beach. Well, who went to the beach? You're missing your subject. Aiden and Riley, those are my twins. Or what did they do? Okay, I'm missing my verb. So those are all fragments. Okay. Fragments are also called dependent clauses, and you will see me abbreviate that DC. Okay. All right, so you're going to practice. Okay. I want you to go through and find the subjects in each one of these sentences. Good. So in this sentence, on the whole, Harry thought he was able to be congratulated on his idea of hiding here. Whole sentence is about Harry. So Harry was our subject. Number 2, he was not perhaps very comfortable lying on the hot, hard earth, but on the other hand, nobody was glaring at him, grinding their teeth so loudly that he could not hear the news, or shooting nasty questions at him, as had happened every time he had tried sitting down in the living room and watching television with his aunt and uncle. Now that's a big sentence, but it's all about Harry, so it's he. Now this sentence right here is a complex sentence, okay? Almost as though this thought had fluttered through the open window. When you have a complex sentence, your subject is not going to be at the very beginning like it was here. It's going to come here. Vernon Dursley, Harry's uncle, suddenly spoke. So your subject of your sentence is Vernon Dursley. Number 4, the Dursleys fell silent. It's all about the Dursleys. Now 5 is a compound sentence. So you're actually going to have 2 subjects. Okay? And I know it's a compound sentence because of the semicolon. The Dursleys really were astonishingly stupid about their son Dudley. In the first part of the sentence, or the first sentence, it's all about the Dursleys. And so there are subject. Now, in this sentence, they had swallowed all his dim-witted lies about having tea with a different member of his gang every night of the summer holidays. It just so happens that the subject is they, which is a pronoun for Dursleys. And so it's basically the same subject. Okay? Very good. Now I want you to find the verbs. And for verbs, like in this one right here, you've got a lot of verbs. And you've got a verb here in your dependent clause. I'm looking for the main verbs. Okay? So go through and do that now. Okay, when you look at the verbs, okay, Harry what? Harry thought. Okay, now this one was a little more complicated because there's a lot of verbs in this number 2. You've got was, lying, was glaring, grinding, could, shooting, had. So what you have to do is you had to look at this last part of the sentence and you had to look at, okay, what's going on here? And you had to ask yourself, what's the main part of the sentence? And it's all talk about how he was not comfortable lying on the hot earth, okay? And then the rest of it's talk about, but on the other hand, and then it's just description after description after description, a comparison. J.K. Rowling is a master at writing, okay? And some of them are the same verbs. So like you've got was, but they're all linking for these 2, okay? Had, linking, okay? So that's why when we are writing later, much later in the year, we're going to talk about why using linking verbs is not the best thing to do when using passive voice, because it does make it difficult for the reader to see things sometimes. So this one was one of those weird ones with the verbs. So this is the main verb with was. That's the one I'm looking for. These are all descriptions of other things that were going on at the time. Number 3, yes, had fluttered is a verb, but it's in the dependent clause, and so spoke is your main verb. 4, Dursley's what? Fell. And then in number 5, you've got 2 sentences in your compound sentence. So in the first one, they were, okay, it's linking, were what? Stupid. And then in the second one, had what? Swallowed. It is also linking. Okay. All right. Focus of our lesson for or our first focus for this lesson is our fanboys. You've heard this term numerous times. Okay. Just make sure that you are familiar with it. These are called coordinating conjunctions. You use them to combine two complete sentences with a comma. Okay. These are the conjunctions for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. I want you to write these down in your notes because you're going to need them over and over and over again. And this way you can refer back to them instead of trying to remember, oh, what were they again from the first lesson. You can easily refer back to them. When you're combining two sentences with a fanboy, you always have to have a comma. You always have to have a comma when combining two complete sentences. Henry could tie the shoe himself. Complete sentence. Comma, fanboy. He could ask Amanda to tie his shoe. Complete sentence. Comma, fanboy. Always have to have comma, fanboy. The focus of our second focus of the mini lesson is the commas with the introductory phrase in a complete sentence. Sometimes you begin a sentence with a fragment. This is called a dependent clause. Okay? And then you go into a complete sentence. When you do this, you're going to have a dependent clause, comma, and then an independent clause. And that's how it looks in a sentence. And there's different phrases you may hear for your dependent clause. Dependent clause, introductory phrase, whatever it is, it's punctuated the same. Okay? Because I went to some ways that the subordinating conjunctions start that sentence are words like before, after, because, when, until, unless, since. These are words that don't complete the thought. So if you have started a sentence with a word that doesn't complete the thought, that's a fragment. Those are going to be introductory phrases, and you're going to need a comma. Because I went home. Well, because you went home what? Comma. After we returned from the movie, yeah, what happened? Tell me. So you know you're going to have a comma after that. When we visited Chicago. Okay, I need more. So you know you're going to have a comma. Examples of what the complete sentence looks like when you add the independent clause. Because London is a very old city, comma, it has buildings from many different eras. So you've got dependent clause, independent clause. After preparing an elaborate meal for herself, dependent clause, Anne was too tired to eat, independent clause. Scared of monsters, dependent clause. Timmy always checked under the bed before he fell asleep, independent clause. Okay. Notice the comma. These are your complex sentences. And I would write that down in your notes as well. To make a complex sentence, you're going to have a dependent clause, comma, independent clause. That's it. Okay. And if you want, you could even write down some examples right here of how to start an independent clause. Start a dependent clause. If that will help you remember. But you may not need it. It just depends on how well you'll remember these words. Okay. Either way, you will need to remember this formula. A dependent clause, comma, independent clause. Okay. All right, your assignment. You are going to do this one on paper. Okay. And you will submit it through the piece of paper. Okay. Um, Mr. Fox, you read as a pretest. Okay, you'll have it again for you to reread if you need to. Fairy tales were originally to teach a lesson. Okay. What lesson do you think Mr. Fox was trying to teach the public when it was written? Now, remember when it was written. I did Google the publication date and it said approximately 1896. So you have to kind of keep that in mind. And do you think it would have been successful? Okay. So, what lesson was it trying to teach, and do you think it was successful? When you write it, this is what I'm looking for: one simple sentence, three compound sentences using any of the fanboy conjunctions, and three sentences using an introductory phrase. You cannot use more than one simple sentence. You can use more of the others. That's fine. I'm okay with that. But no more than one simple sentence. Okay. When you're done, I need you to identify your sentences. If you have highlighters, great, use them. If not, then you can um, do something else. You can do like um, a box around your um, dependent clause, and you can do like a big long circle um, around your complete sentence, and then you could do a little circle around your commas. Okay, um, that's fine. Either way, don't forget this part because it is required. That tells me that you are aware of what you're doing, because a lot of what writing is making you aware of what you're doing so that it becomes habit. And so that's one of the things I'm really looking to get you to do, is become aware of the aspects of writing. Okay. And then when you're done, you will submit that to me. Good luck, and let me know if you have any questions.